So now I want to start with that, and that is إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا. No doubt the human being, he was created halou'. The Arabic word is halou', which means extremely inappropriately reactionary. That's how I like to translate halou'. Halou' يعني له قلة الصبر. He has very little patience. Very little patience. And he reacts to good things and bad things in a way that's not appropriate. That most of the time, the things that come our way, situations that we find ourselves in, are actions that necessarily demand from us a reaction. And most of the time, the human being has the wrong reaction. We have the wrong reaction to most situations. Somebody says something, and in your mind, a thought crosses, man, if I say something now, I could really put this guy down. I have an insult that just came in my head that I'm so itching to say to him, and that the urge is so strong that you just go ahead and you say it. And everybody gets a laugh out of it, and you're like, yes, score. Because that impulse was there, and you had to act on that impulse. That makes you a halou'. Halou' is someone who doesn't have patience over themselves when the situation arrives. Halou' is actually to have bad reactions to any circumstance, good or bad. It's general in nature. And Allah says the human being was created with this capacity. But before I go on, this can create a problem. Just translating it like that can create a problem in the minds of some Muslims. The human being, Allah tells us, is an honored creation of Allah. It's an honored creation of Allah. And actually in my talk about psychology the other night, about sadness and stuff, if you recall, I was mentioning how we don't believe the human being is a flawed creature. But if you just read the ayah just like that, the human being was created just, that in a reactionary way. That one of his qualities is that he's very reactionary. That sounds like a flaw. But in the Arabic language, بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ, the word halou'an grammatically would be considered a hal, a state. And a state is actually conditionally, it's limited. Meaning there's a difference, I'll try to make this as simple as I can, folks. There's a difference between an adjective and a state. An adjective is a quality you have, like short, or tall, or fat, or skinny, or ugly, or pretty, or whatever. You have a quality, you have it. You don't change it. You can't change that about yourself. But when you have a state, like angry is a state, right? Happy is a state. Do those states change? Yeah. I mean, for some of you, they don't change, I know, but normally those states are supposed to change. الأحوال تتغير. الأحوال تتغير. The states are supposed to change. Now, grammatically, that's also the case. When something is a hal, it's actually not describing something permanent. So if you consider the grammar of the ayah, you would have to say the human being was created with the capacity to be in that state. One of the potential threats to the human personality is our tendency to become reactionary if we don't watch it. That danger exists inside of us, to become halou'. And then it's even muqayyad, it's restricted in the ayat, إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرْ جَزُعًا. إِذَا means when. In other words, the human being becomes inappropriately reactionary when, so Allah didn't just say all the time, but when something happens, when bad things happen to him. إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرْ جَزُعًا. He has no patience whatsoever. He becomes cowardly. He caves in. He loses all hope. He becomes negative. He doesn't want to face reality. All of these are taken from Lisan al-Arab, like the lexicon of the Arabic language. What jazu' means. Jaza' means to lose hope, to become cowardly, to not face opposition, to become negative, to not have any patience, to become just completely irritated. So you become a person, when something bad happens, ashar here doesn't mean evil necessarily, it means anything that you didn't want happening. Something happens and you're just in a bad mood immediately. You just explode and you become a different person all of a sudden. And some people are like that, probably, maybe even yourself, possibly, that you become a completely different person if you hear something you didn't want to hear. And people are afraid to talk to you, because they don't know when you're going to explode. You're an emotional minefield. So your friends want to tell you have an issue, but they're really scared to tell you. So your friends among themselves say, hey bro, you're going to tell him? Nah bro, you tell him. You tell him, because he's jazu'. He's gonna blow up. He can't handle it. He can't handle it. So there are people like that, and that's not the only reaction. Al-ghadab, that's not the only, raddatul amal. It's not the only reaction, but there are other reactions too. Like you tell someone something and they completely become depressed. Or you criticize someone and they lose all self-confidence. Like, oh yeah, you're right, I'm just scum. Yeah, I'll never do this again, forget it. Like you have this kid who's like an MSA president or something, and he made a flyer, or he put a program together, and the program, they didn't order food correctly or something, or whatever, and somebody came and said, brother, if you ordered the food a couple of days ago, it would have been better. Oh yeah, I forgot, I'm quit the MSA, I can't do anything. I just, like, that's jazur. Okay, this bad reaction, you overly react. You have an overly negative reaction when criticism is thrown your way. Right? You don't know how to navigate it. And this is jazur. These are very, very human tendencies. This is the other reason I wanted to bring up this passage, is that this passage begins with emotions that all of us have, and experiences that all of us have had. So it's not speaking about a very lofty, high-level human being that you can't even relate to. It's talking about you and me. I've been in that position for sure. I've been in the position where I'm criticized and I become completely depressed. Like, what's the point even? And sometimes I've been given pretty amazing criticism. Like I remember one of the first times I gave a talk, it was actually, I still remember, it was at St. John's MSA. I'm not hating on St. John's MSA, I'm just saying. Gave a talk, and somebody came up to me, an older came up to me, shook my hand and said, you should never speak again. It felt really bad. It was really bad. But, I got over it. And then I see him once in a while, and I was like, what's up? Still talking. But anyhow, and you have to learn to navigate criticism. So إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا is not just, by the way, it's not limited to criticism. It's about any setback in life. Any setback happens in life and you have a negative reaction, that's jazur. So first Allah says you have impulsive reactions, good or bad. And then particularly when bad things happen, you just collapse, you fall apart. And you can't deal with it. And some people have strange reactions. You know what their jaza' is? Their jaza' is they're not going to talk about it, they're going to ignore it. So their wife is telling them they have an issue, like, okay, we'll talk about this later, I'm just going to go play Assassin's Creed right now. Or we're just going to play for 4 hours until you go to sleep, and then we'll pretend the problem doesn't exist. You can't face the discussion. You can't be confronted about it, right? And every time it's brought up, you just avoid the subject, and you just go do something else. This is a form of jaza' also, an inability to face the problems that are in front of you.